Steel, this is Living Today. I am Brian Kelsey. I'm KelseyOnTheHouse.com. Also follow me on Twitter at Kels on the House. Again, Kels on the House. Call us up here at Sirius 112 XM 157 at 866-675-6675. I'm here with Kelsey Banfield. No relation. You get a great name. But you have written a book, and it's called, it's about to be
It's been published spring 2012.
It's called The Naptime Chef.
Yes.
And, so, like many married couples, we've been having some issues. And my wife tells me that one of the most attractive qualities a man can have is the ability to cook. Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
So the big joke is that I could build you a kitchen with my eyes closed, but I can't boil water. So I am thinking maybe, to help save the marriage, if I could learn teach me some cooking. Oh, in fact, I'll trade you. You teach me some cooking tips, and I'll teach you some carpentry tips, and hopefully.
Okay.
I can.
A marriage mate.
I'll be sleeping in my own bed again. I'm kidding. No, but we both have kids. We both have young kids, and the Naptime Chef is basically explain it. But that's how it all came about. It's about kids.
Because I love to cook and bake, and I did it all the time before my daughter was born, and then she was born, and my life was turned upside down. And at 5 o'clock, when I usually would start dinner or have some fun in the kitchen, she was fussy, and I was exhausted. And so my husband would come home to no dinner and a take-up menu. As opposed to so much fun in the kitchen, look at this new experiment I did tonight, this new dish. So when she got a little older, maybe 3 or 4 months old, we were sleeping better, and one day I had some vegetables, and I chopped them up during nap time because I knew they were going to go bad, and I thought, I'll just make some soup. So I made some soup, and I thought, that's going to be great for dinner. And so I left the pot where it was, and then my husband came home, and we were exhausted, and the baby was crying, but I had dinner ready.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Anybody with young kids knows that, food, I don't think I've ever sat down to eat ever. I mean, it's always on the run. I mean, it's really, really tricky. So that's sort of what I'm trying to hope to do is to get some tips about how, because most of the cooking around my house is for the kids.
Yeah.
They're young. How old is
She just turned 3.
She's 3, okay.
Yep.
I've got 2 young boys, and they're always hungry. Always hungry.
Yes.
Wait a minute.
Chris sent me around here to get the cookies. This is not about me.
Hold everything.
Let me do it.
I just got to tell you, before you take these delicious cookies here, Kelsey made these amazing cookies. And what are they? They're chocolate?
They're double chocolate espresso cookies. And here's a tip about them. I made the dough 2 days ago while my daughter was at school. So
really?
10 minutes. So, I'll just make the dough for Brian. I made the dough, and then I baked them this morning when she was at school again.
You kept the dough in the refrigerator.
Divided it up.
Yeah.
Kept the dough in the fridge. It's so easy to do. And
see, I would never have even, it's coming from me, but I would never have thought of that. It stays good for, how long does it stay good for?
For 2 or 3 days in the fridge, or you can freeze it if you have to.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, now everyone's coming over to steal our cookies. I brought them over to our side, but that's what I was eating when we came back from the break. So, okay, Kelsey, how can I really effectively use the time that I have, to make a meal?
Okay, so
my wife's not home. Let's say she's out working or whatever, and I got to make. And
the kids go to school. Okay, so they're away for a little bit.
Right.
And because the Naptime Chef is not about cooking during nap time 7 days a week, that would be crazy. But if you're going to start, starting off cooking, set aside 30 minutes a day and budget your time, and do something simple, like start off, take shrimp, put them on skewers, and put them in the marinade.
Okay. Stop right there. What kind of marinade?
You would do like an olive oil with lemons and limes and maybe some cilantro or some spices. Put it in a Ziploc bag in your refrigerator, and then forget about them. And at dinner time, turn on the grill. Do you know how to grill?
Grilling, I can handle, yeah. The stove is off limits.
I thought that one might be a good starting point. Then grill the shrimp 5 minutes per side, and then you have shrimp for dinner.
That's great.
And then on the side, I love to do couscous that even comes in boxes because that's so easy. If you want to learn something on the stovetop, you boil the water, pour in the couscous, maybe little flavorings or a spice packet. Put on the lid, and 5 minutes later, it's ready.
Here's a question I have, speaking of that. Are you supposed to, I don't know. This is what I've heard. When you boil the water, getting back to just literally.
We're on basics.
So, like, are you supposed to throw in salt? Like, a lot of them toss
people
in
put in a lot of salt. Salt is really great for pasta because it enhances the flavor of the pasta. They always say the benchmark is that your water should taste like seawater.
Oh, really?
That's how you
salt?
know it's salted properly.
Oh, wow.
And if you've ever had pasta that's cooked in salted water and cooked with pasta that's not, you can really taste the difference.
So how much, like in a basic pot of, a
I
pan?
usually throw in a couple of tablespoons kosher salt.
Oh, yeah. That's kosher salt's the best.
Yeah. For a pound of pasta. That's to feed 4 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're boiling our couscous.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
And then you put on the lid and
Yeah.
you turn off the heat and it absorbs and you fluff it up and you have couscous with your grilled shrimp.
That's great.
And then you could have a salad. And you can buy assemble a salad. You can buy one that is assembled or that you can assemble yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a certain way of cutting vegetables for salads that I clearly don't know. I mean, I just chop, in any which way. But you can really tell when someone who knows how, like yourself, how to make a salad, how everything is sliced in a certain way, and that's an art in itself.
I do.
So we've got shrimp and couscous. That now, what about something like, what about if it's just for the kids? What about a meal for the kids?
Well, one thing my daughter loves is she loves pesto with tortellini.
Mm-hmm.
I call her pesto tortellini bowl. I don't know, she just loves pesto. I've always made it. So one thing I do is when I do something like a pesto or I make tomato sauce, because I'll make tomato sauce for her and really ramp it up with vegetables for flavor and for health. And I'll make big batches and then freeze it. And that's another thing. If you're going to tackle, a big project like a soup or a sauce or something like that,
make a lot of it.
Make a lot of it.
Yeah.
And freeze it. So much easier. Store it if you have the storage, which is always a.
That's we bought this fancy refrigerator when we remodeled our kitchen, and it has no freezer storage. I think we were talking about this before.
Yeah.
There's no, and that is we're freezing so many things. I think we're going to buy a separate freezer. For the basement or for the garage or something.
I was thinking of that too. I was wondering about the locker freezer versus the full-size freezer and full-size refrigerator.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you live, but with kids, there's a lot of freezing that goes on.
Freezing is a great way to preserve kind of fresh foods. Like we go strawberry picking, and I always freeze tons of strawberries, and then we use them all winter long and that kind of thing. So a freezer is a great tool. I think it's a good kitchen investment.
Okay, so we've got, so now are those, that's just something you've frozen, the tortellini, I mean that's...
Yeah, well, no, the tortellini I just use fresh.
Okay.
Tortellini you can buy anywhere. I don't make my own tortellini. That would be, that's counterproductive of time usage. So, but then I will thaw the pesto and I'll warm it up and make it into a little sauce. Maybe I'll add some goat cheese or some cream for it, and then we'll have a pesto tortellini bowl. But I like that too. So I'll maybe have a small portion of that with a big salad on the side, and she'll have a bigger portion for dinner with her carrots or whatever else she wants to have.
Well, that's also brings up a good point. Is that with kids and husband and. It's really great. It would be great in a perfect world to make one meal that everybody's going to eat.
It would be.
In my house, my wife makes like 5 different meals, and there's only 4 of us. I mean, there's like hers, mine, and the kids. So to find something that everybody will eat. The kids, it's hard. I mean, past chicken nuggets.
The common ingredient.
Yeah.
Is always a big, with chicken it's another one. We'll do breaded chicken, and I'll maybe do it with pasta or over some lettuce or spinach or all sorts of different things, and where my daughter will just want it plain with her ketchup, which is fine, You just let it roll.
So most of your recipes in the Naptime Chef, and you could check out the naptimechef.com.
Yep.
And you've got videos on there of how you do all your
I do. I was doing all of these. I was writing, and then my friend said, come on, Kelsey, this isn't really how it works. I said, no, it is. I cook during nap time. I'm a Naptime Chef. And so I said, I'll show you. So I started filming these little videos of me, and they're pretty basic. I'm certainly not a producer, but they're fun to do because it really does show that, one minute I'll be cooking during nap time, and Dara will wake up and be crying in the corner as I finish something up, or I'll do stuff and I'll go pick her up at school, and it really shows how it kind of works during the day.
Well, I think, again, we were talking about this earlier, is that, we're such a attention deficit world. We have such a short attention span that people want to just go and click on and just watch how you're doing it.
They're always less than 5 minutes long. And it's a very straightforward situation, That's
important online because people aren't going to spend that much time online watching. So you're taping your
I just tape how I do it. Yep.
And what are what is one of the most, what is probably the most popular? Like your friends and stuff, what are they asking you
about? It's funny. One of the recipes has been incredibly popular is my pulled pork in the slow cooker or in the Dutch oven.
God, that sounds delicious.
But I can tell you, Brian, 10 minutes. You sear the pork, put the marinade in the Dutch oven, put it in the oven,
right?
Shut the door, and forget about it for 3 hours. I mean, literally, you can leave the house.
But what the prep? How do you prep it?
Well, the marinade I make is just one big bowl of all sorts of different sauces, and there's vinegar and all sorts of different things in there. And then you sear the pork on all sides, so it just keeps the juices in, and then you pour this marinade in there, and it will just slowly cook and bubble away all afternoon. And then you can pull it out, shred it with a fork, and then you could do pulled pork tacos or a sandwich or whatever you want.
Oh, my God. That sounds really good. Well, now, I promise you that, we can trade some tips here. Do you have any questions
I do.
for me?
If you see my webisodes, you'll notice that there's a big blank space in the middle of my kitchen, and we're in the mood for... We're kind of in the arena for a kitchen island. So people have said, you should just buy one, or you should have it made. And I want one that has a really great workspace, but it also stores a lot. So if I were going to do, say, a lot of chopping, do I get it plumbed in a vegetable sink and then do a wooden base or granite? I mean, what do you think?
Well, again, it all depends on your needs.
Yeah.
You cook a lot. There are kitchen islands you can buy that are pre-made, that are made for basically, that kind of cover a lot of bases. Obviously, they're not plumbed, so if you did get it, you have to make sure that you can have it plumbed and, check out underneath the floor if it's easy to get, water up and drain up there. But for your situation, it might be better to have it custom built, just because you will still spend, you're not going to spend that much more. You're going to want, again, water in a drain, and there are certain things that you like if you want, a butcher block maybe as part of it, or different levels. I made our kitchen island, and I know that we really wanted a place to eat there. Some people don't like to eat at their island, strictly for food prep. We wanted food prep and a place to eat, so I made a portion of it elevated and made it actually out of walnut. And then the bottom part was, I actually used marble. And speaking of countertops, we were talking earlier, for baking, because it's easy to, not that I'm doing anything. But for your situation, I would say you're not going to spend that much more on having one custom built, especially for the storage. I mean, there's a lot of odds in there. There's weird things to store. I think you were telling me before. Baking pans.
Gosh, they're so hard to store.
Well, I built this. The way I handle that in mine is I built basically like a pantry door underneath the island, and I mean it's kind of sort of sloppy, but you just shove them in there and they're out of sight. Either odd-shaped ones or whatever, but at least the door closes, you can't see them, and they're done.
That's what I need.
That's a big. God, storage is.
It is. So no matter where you are, it's always a question. And then my other question is, because I do all this vegetable chopping, which is not as artful as you might think, but
I think it is.
What is the best surface, the best wood surface for chopping vegetables? I'm not butchering, heavy cuts of meat.
You're not like slaughtering a cow.
No.
Okay.
I am just doing your basic home cooking, and I was... we have a small butcher block, but I wanted a larger one, and then it comes down to what kind of grains and cuts and...
Well, the kind of the industry standard is maple, because it's so hard, and the way a butcher block is made is kind of like, the only way I can describe it is like, let's say you're making sushi, and you roll the sushi, and then you cut
another thing I do not make.
I don't make sushi, but I know how it's
made.
Right.
I just don't see the need to make it myself.
So, sushi's rolled and then it's cut. So picture those pieces cut and you flip them over. Now the end grain of the wood or the end grain of the sushi is looking up. And those square blocks put together make a butcher block, and that's a really stable surface to cut on when it's using the end grain like that. Obviously you have to take in consideration, if you're going to be using meat, I mean, you really got to clean it. And you can use oil, a natural oil product to oil the surface. So that is basically the main, maple is the main wood, but also my dad just made this for my mom, a really nice walnut butcher block, and he did the same thing. He cut square pieces of it and cut it on the end, and it took a long time. It's quite a project, but there are a lot of companies online that offer a lot of different woods, but the main wood, maple and walnut, are two really good choices. And you know what's really cool is if you ever have seen these, I've seen these in a lot of antique shops, those really old butcher block islands almost. They're like probably about 4 feet wide by about 3 feet high, and they're kind of expensive because they're so old. Well, that's the other thing, portability. How big is your kitchen? Are you going to be moving it around? But these are really cool because they're already aged so well, and they've got like chops in them from years ago. But basically, to answer your question, maple.
Noted.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Now, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm all alone. The kids are not, they're at school. My wife's out. I want to make her, I want to make her a really, a nice dinner.
Mm-hmm.
She's a vegetarian.
Okay.
But she eats seafood.
Okay.
So, give me a good recipe that I can surprise her with, that I can prepare, again, maybe during the day, and then at
you want
nighttime.
something simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something, yeah.
This is a really simple one. This is the simplest that they get, and it's a never-fail recipe. Roast salmon with pesto. So we're back to the pesto again, which it's really better if you make it yourself. But do you have a food processor?
Is that the Cuisinart?
The Cuisinart?
Yes, I have a Cuisinart.
We can say the brand name. Several brands make it, but if you know it as a Cuisinart. Yes.
Yep.
And if you have that, and you can get the basil and garlic and pine nuts and everything and make it yourself. Yeah. So make your pesto, and then you literally spread it on the top of the salmon, and then when she gets home, roast it for maybe 15 minutes.
But is there other different cuts of salmon? I mean, when I go to the butcher,
do a fillet and say you need to serve, if you're going to serve 2 or 3 or 4 people, and the rule of thumb is about 6 to 8 ounces per person of fish, and a good fishmonger should know that.
What's a fishmonger?
Where do you buy your fish?
Literally, is that like a butcher? Like a fish?
Well, yes. So maybe not the one at the mega grocery store. Go to a fish store. The fishmonger is a fancy name for the person behind the counter at the fish store. Seems to know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Okay, a fishmonger.
They should be able to tell you, say I have a salmon fillet. I'm going to spread pesto on top of it and roast it, and they will say, okay, this is the amount you need for 2 people. Or 3 or 4 people.
Right. Oh, my gosh. My head's spinning.
There are a lot of resources out there.
If you have a question for Kelsey Banfield, the Naptime Chef, call us up at 866-675-6675. It's Martha Stewart Living Radio. I'm Brian Kelsey. And my biggest thing is that it's got to be stupid-proof, because guys, I know some guys who are really good chefs, but for the most part, listen, I mean, speaking for myself, I need something so, dumb-proof. And is there...
Vegetarian.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
What about, is there any kind of, like, when I'm buying meat, let's say, at the store, am I picking out, like, less, like lean meat or, something... Well,
this is a debate. I mean, lean meat has less fat, which is good for you, but also, I think, is a little less flavor.
Interesting.
So I wouldn't go the fatty cuts of meat, but the middle of the road, maybe 85% lean hamburgers are what I do. And that's another thing. Maybe if your children like hamburgers and you do, you can always form burger patties while they're at school and then grill them at dinner time, that kind of thing.
Right.
When you're buying cuts of meat, it says usually right on the label, and you can see the folds of meat, of the fat in the meat, and you can make your decision there. But I would just stick, honestly, budget-wise, I stick with skirt steak and easy, inexpensive cuts of meat, and then you just grill them or marinate them, and it really moistens them. And it's much more manageable for an everyday household.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't afford to eat a filet every single night, and I think it's silly to expect other people to do so.
My mother-in-law, she claims that there's a steak cut called a Franken steak. Is that true? Has anyone heard of a Franken?
I've heard of flank steak.
No, Franken.
Steak.
And she swears by it.
That's new to me.
And she said, Brian...
I won't say it doesn't exist because I don't know, but I've never heard of that myself.
My wife says when we were growing up, we had Franken steak, and it's some sort of cut. Doesn't sound very attractive, but
No.
So, Kelsey, now ask me another question, because we're trading tips here. Cooking tips for carpentry tips, because I need to learn how to cook.
So have you ever watched Martha Stewart show, obviously. How can they make her kitchen like my kitchen like hers, but without her budget?
Well, television studios.
I've been to the studio and been in the audience. It was so awesome.
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful, beautiful set, and I just love it, and I love the island and everything. And I'd love my kitchen to look like that, but I have no idea how to go about it.
Well, first of all, that it's a television set is obviously a lot different. It's made for lighting and for cameras, and so it's pretty spread out, and you have as much space as you can. But in your own home, you really... Well, first of all, as I was saying before, the big box stores, the Home Depots, the Lowe's, they've come a long way with product, and especially I think I remember Martha has glass tile in her set, but there's a lot of really cool glass tile that's inexpensive, and it's really easy to apply. There's this new kind of tile that has normally when you put up tile, you have to spread on a thin set and set it in and wait, and then you grout it. But this is actually, it's got a plastic sticky back. So all you need is, let's say you have well, that's exactly it. Let's say your backsplash is just sheetrock.
It is right now. Yeah.
So all you have to do is make sure it's clean, and then peel off the back. And then even if they're small glass tiles, little inch ones, they come in big sheets of 12 by 12, and you just stick it on, and they're really easy to cut around because they're small pieces. And then the only thing you have to do is grout, and grout comes in pre-mixed containers again at Home Depot or Lowe's, and you spread it on and you wipe it off, and that will, like the backsplash, will really make a big difference in your Martha kitchen. Also, the island, again, we're talking about the island. The island is...
I feel like the island's the center of a kitchen so many times.
And an island depends on your cooking style. Some people want their full oven, their stove, everything in the island. Some just want a sink. And so that's kind of depends on how you cook.
Yeah.
So let's see. We've got tile. We've got the island. What about lighting? Okay. You can really... if you have a high ceiling, let's say, in your kitchen, you can get away with, I'm a big fan of, if you're not going to be up close and personal with a light or a fixture or something, get a cheapo one. A cheapo. I mean, really cheap, because you're far away from it. You're not physically touching it, and it looks good from a distance. You can get a really, really good bargain either on eBay. I'm addicted to eBay. Again, the big box stores. Yeah. Also, flea markets and stuff like that. There is so much great stuff you can get for so inexpensive, especially light fixtures. Now, faucets and different fixtures like that, you really kind of can't cut corners, because that you use every day, all day long. Like when we did our kitchen, I spent a lot of money on our main faucet, because I know everybody's going to be using that all day long. Everyone's going to be touching it. Anybody who comes over our house to wash their hands, whatever, they're going to be using it. So I made sure it was sturdy and wasn't going to fall apart, because you can get it cheap. So that is where you're going to kind of spend your money. But you can save money on tile and on lighting, and depending if you're going to redo your floors, an engineered...
Now you're giving me ideas.
Well, I'm a big fan of engineered floors, even in kitchens. A lot of people shy away from wood in kitchens, but...
Oh, no, it's the best on my back.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and tile can be cold.
Everything breaks on tile.
That's the other thing. You drop something, and it shatters.
One baby will teach you that.
Oh, yeah. I've learned my lesson. We put down wood floors, but engineered wood flooring is... The coating that is on there is so strong that it can stand up to a lot of kitchen wear and tear, and they've come a long way with engineered flooring. So you can have a whole new look between your flooring and your island and your tile. Everything has really kind of come down in price, especially in this economic climate.
That's good. So I'll take a couple nap times and redo my kitchen. I'll film that for you.
866-675-6675. It's Brian Kelsey. We're talking with Kelsey Banfield. No relation. She wrote a book called The Naptime Chef, which is going to be out in... when?
Spring 2012, a year. Yep.
And it basically talks about how you can cook
cook and
when kids are
eat and enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, that's, people, in fact, Naomi and I were talking about this. If you don't have kids, it's really hard to understand how your day works around the kids, with young kids especially. Maybe when they get older, I don't know.
I don't know, maybe. But, I mean, for a long time, I know I'll be picking her up and dropping her off, and, she does nap time. Sometimes she just does quiet time, but there's still downtime, and I remember telling my mother about when she was 6 months old, I said, Mom, I figured it out. I just cook a lot when she's napping, and I can still enjoy it, and we have great meals, and I don't do it every single night, but we have leftovers. And she said, oh, Kelsey, I always cooked when the kids were at school or when you were asleep. She used to be, I'll never forget, I would come down on our birthdays. We would come down in the morning, my brother and I, and she'd be frosting cupcakes. And I would think to myself, in her pajamas.
Right.
I was like, what is she doing? And later on, she was like, oh, I always baked all your birthday cakes and cupcakes after you guys went to bed at night.
It's the only time you can do it.
That's the only time you can do it. And so here your mom was right. She knew this all, 30 years ago, but I'm just figuring it out now. But
well, as you become moms and dads, you realize, that's how you do it.
Yeah, and so many people, when I started the blog, they started sharing these secrets, like, I used to cook everything on Sunday, and then I set aside portions of chicken all week, and we'd have chicken chili, and we'd have chicken enchiladas, and every mom, once they really get into it, you develop your tricks.
Yeah. Well,
and dads.
And translating that into home renovation, that's kind of what I've done at night, is you learn to do sort of the quiet stuff at night. I know after the kids go to bed, and let's say I'm going to, have some big project I'm going to do the next day, I get all the prep work out of the way. Let's say I'm going to I don't even know what, I'm going to paint or something. So after the kids go to bed, I go up, I get everything all set up, I get paintbrushes out, the tarps are down, everything's ready to go. So as soon as I have my time, my available small slot of time,
that 1 hour.
Right, that 1 hour, that I make the most of that hour, and I can, boom, get so much done. It's same with cooking.
It is. It's about being efficient and enjoying it. I mean, there's some days when I want to experiment with something, and I can't, even when she's awake, I just can't cook a whole meal while she's awake. Mm-hmm. It's just next to impossible. If I want to try something new and I need to concentrate, it's like, oh, I know she's going to be at school, or okay, she's going to be napping or something like that, and then you can work it all out.
Yep. Kelsey, thanks so much
for
coming
in. Me.
Kelsey Banfield, the Nap Time Chef, and it's going to be out in, what do we say, April?
Spring 2012.
Spring 2012.
Yeah, we don't have an exact date yet.
And let's see, are these recipes, that says these are recipes are going to be up
on the website.
MarthaStewart.com/radio blog. The cinnamon chip scones.
The cinnamon chip scones.
That sounds so
because scones, again, I make your batter in the evening after they're asleep, press it into a circle, and put it in the fridge. Come down in the morning, cut out your wedges, put them in the oven, and scones for breakfast.
Oh, my God, that's fantastic. And we can check you out online at thenaptimechef.com.
Yep.
And I see the wine has arrived.
I'm going to stick around, okay?
You want to stick around for the wine? We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we are going to be talking wine, and I see bottles being opened. I see festivities. Kelsey Banfield, the Nap Time Chef, thanks so much for coming. Appreciate it. It's Martha Stewart Living Radio on Sirius 112 XM 157, and we'll be back in just a minute.
They brought to life the sound. Sirius XM has brought together two legendary troubadours for Simon and Garfunkel Radio. Hear from Paul Simon.
Marty and I started together when we were 13.
And Art Garfunkel.
It's really exciting to me.
We celebrate the 40th anniversary edition of Bridge Over Troubled Water. Simon and Garfunkel Radio. Hear it now on Sirius 113.
This is Tony Polacek, co-host of Homegrown. If you've put off cleaning your garden tools all season long, now's the chance to give them the tune-up they need. All tools work more effectively and last longer when they have clean, sharp edges and are free of rust and gunked-up dried soil. Just like in the kitchen, good, well-cared-for tools mean jobs are more easily accomplished, and it will show in your garden work, too. For more gardening tips, tune in to Homegrown Tuesdays at 9 a.m. East, Thursdays at 1 p.m. East on Martha Stewart Living Radio, Sirius 112 and XM 157.
45,000 wind sprints, over 5,700 super shuttles, 200 extra stops a day. This is training to get to the top of my game, just like an orthodontist.
Only orthodontists receive an extra 2 to 3 years of specialized education beyond dental school to become specialists in straightening and aligning teeth.
See an orthodontist for free. Visit braces.org to download your free consultation coupon.
The American Association of Orthodontists. Our expertise will make you smile.
Oh, Emily, which diaper rash ointment should Mommy pick? They all seem the same.
Believe me, they're not. Try this one.
Dr. Smith?
Yep, it goes on like a cream but protects like an ointment. It was pediatrician developed, and it's made with only the most premium blend of ingredients.
Does it work fast?
Nothing works faster, even on severe diaper rash.
Sounds great.
Dr. Smith's for diaper rash. Problem solved. For more diaper rash tips and a valuable coupon, parents visit drsmith.com. Keep out of the reach of children. Use only as directed.
Do you love your garden but have limited time to spend working on it? If so, a flower carpet rose is the perfect plant for you. Once planted, you can on a summer of blooms. Flower carpet roses are easy to care for and do not require special pruning or spraying for maximum performance. Use flower carpet roses as a landscape rose in mass plantings or as a container plant. You can even plant a border of flower carpet roses around the pool or patio. Enjoy non-stop blooms all summer long. To find out more, visit carpet.com.
Martha Stewart Living Radio, Sirius 112 and XM 157. Learn something new every day. Welcome back to Living Today on Martha Stewart Living Radio, Sirius 112. And XM 157.
It's Martha Stewart Living Radio. This is Living Today. I am Brian Kelsey from KelseyOnTheHouse.com, guest hosting today and having a fantastic time here on Sirius 112 and XM 157. We're talking wine, and I don't know why could we have scheduled this segment in the beginning so we could, have some have a nice little buzz throughout the rest of the day. We're going to be talking in a second with Aldo Sohm, who's the wine director help me pronounce this. Shouldn't I know this? Le Bernard. That shows you how uncultured I am. That's like the city's longest rated 4-star restaurant here in Manhattan. Am I right, Aldo?
Yes.
So Aldo is here, and we're going to talk. First of all, Aldo, I'm a beer guy. I've tried to learn about wine. I'm dating my wife. I was trying to be all slick and no wines, and I never got the grasp of it. And,
but you're married, right?
Yeah, yes.
So it works with you too, right?
I was like, let me get you that microbrew, honey.
So therefore, I brought a beer with you.
Oh my gosh! So Aldo, now you've just come out with a glassware collection.
Yeah.
And what I am really fascinated with is how wine can taste different, or any alcohol or any beverage really, in a different kind of glass.
It makes a huge impact.
Now, why? Like, if I have a glass, if I take my, let's take, just some a water glass, and I put wine in it and drink it. What's the difference between?
Well, basically, you drink, but the nose will be very different. You smell very differently because the angles go different, and our tongue has different spots where we taste. On the peak of the tongue, we taste sweetness. On the side, we taste salty and acidity, and the far back is bitterness. And depending how that wine falls on our palate or on our tongue, we taste different components on it, but you smell also different.
Well, yeah, that's what I was also going to ask you. When you're, what is the purpose of when you pour a glass of wine of smelling it and swirling it? Like, how does that, and does that have to do with the glass style of swirling it? Is it gonna smell different or something? Or
well, look. Smelling actually is a little bit underestimated because basically that what we think or believe we can taste, we actually smell. Now, today my perfect example, I have a slight cold. So whenever you have a cold, you're a little bit congested.
Right.
So even you probably have noticed your favorite food or your favorite beverage does not taste as good.
Right.
Why? Because once we normally swallow, we exhale. By exhaling, actually, we start smelling, and then actually where everything starts working together,
Right,
so many people tell me when we talk about fruit components, when we smell on wines, I've never smelled on a strawberry. Well, you did.
Right.
But just not as conscious, maybe.
Right. All right, so tell me a little bit about, so you're the wine director, right?
Yeah.
Now, what are you doing? Like, what do you do? Are you sampling wines? What does a wine director do at a 4-star restaurant?
What is it?
Are you sampling? Are you traveling? Are you just drinking all day long? What's...
Well, basically...
Sounds like a great job.
Eric Hubert says he pays me for drinking. It's not like that at all.
Right. I just picture you sitting around just like in a back room somewhere in a cellar instead.
No? No, it's more serious.
I know. In fact, listen to this. Where is it? Where am I reading this? That you are voted the best sommelier in the world.
In 2008.
In 2008. Like, did you have to take a test or do an obstacle course? How do you get something?
It's actually a little bit of both. It's written exams, it's obstacle courses.
Right.
There's actually one coming up in New York in April, Best Sommelier in America. I won that competition in 2007, which entitled me to go and represent America to the Best Sommelier in the World competition.
That's fantastic. So you know your stuff.
People say so.
So what do you do as a wine director? What am
I doing? Look, I can tell you a little bit how my day starts. I come in the morning, start answering some emails from from wine suppliers, then probably have my wine meetings where I start tasting in the morning with people, because in the morning you can taste the best. You're sharp.
Okay, hold everything. Yeah. So you're telling me that the morning is the best time to drink?
Well,
is that what you're saying?
Let me make a difference between drinking and tasting.
It's the taste. Oh, the taste. Okay.
There's a big difference.
Yep.
Tasting is, taste something concentrated, making mental notes, or making even notes and start, making your buying decisions.
So real conscious decisions about how something tastes.
Because, look, whenever you eat, your palate is already a little bit, distracted. Because, once you eat a little bit bread, something, your palate, you taste different.
Right.
And in the morning, the best time